Hi, everyone. Ed Bixby here from the Global Green Burial Alliance, and this is Spotlight Now. Today, I'm here with Emily Myers, who is a UK-based celebrant who creates a life-affirming funeral and celebration of lives lived. She works closely with families to gently guide them through loss, helping craft meaningful ceremonies that honor their loved one's story with care, warmth, and intention. Emily is also a passionate advocate for sustainability and green funerals, believing in gentle, meaningful farewells that return people to the earth with love and respect. So, welcome, Emily.
Hello, lovely to be here, Ed. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. We really are interested in what you have to do and sharing that with our audience. So, can you share how you first became a celebrant and what drew you to the path of supporting people through life's meaningful transitions?
Okay, so it's a bit of a journey for me, really. I suppose it started when I hurt my leg, and I was in the medical institutions, and I didn't really like what was happening and what they said to me. So I started to get really interested in alternative health. Um, from there, I trained to be a homeopath, which took me on another whole rabbit hole. And I just became really interested in different ways of doing things, I suppose. Um, at the same time, I had a friend who was one of my homeopath friends who was training to be a celebrant. Um, I sit in lots of women's circles, so I really love being involved in ritual and sharing circles. So when I found out what a celebrant was, because I think there's quite an up and coming thing really in the UK, I don't think there's still probably lots of people that don't even know what a celebrant is. But once I knew what a celebrant was, I thought, yeah, I would really love to do that. I was a teacher by background anyway. That was my first ever job. So working with people has always been what I've done, and holding that space, which you do when you're a teacher, is really important. So I found out a little bit more about celebrancy, and I trained in 2019. So I did the wedding training and the funeral training. And when I think back, probably my very first experience of like holding space and knowing that, knowing there was something deeper or working with that in some way, because as a child, it didn't really enter my background at all, even though I love being outside and I love, fairies and all that sort of stuff. I just remember after my grandmother died, when I was in my early 20s, me and my sister, I just said to her, let's go and do something. And I lived in Essex at the time. That's where I grew up. And there's this little village called Canewdon, and it's well known for being a little bit witchy and a little bit alternative. And there's a lovely little church there. So I just said to my sister, let's go to that church. Let's go and sit, in the graveyard. And so we went there together with some packet of joss sticks, and we just sat in the graveyard. We lit some joss sticks, and we just talked about our grandma that had died maybe a year before. And it was such a, special moment for me and my sister to connect and to connect in with my grandmother. So I think it was kind of always in me that I love the ritual, and I love taking that sacred time out and just talking about the deep things in life. So the celebrancy, once I knew what it was, it just felt really like a special thing to do for people. So yeah, I think that's what led me into it.
Absolutely, and I must commend you. It's really interesting how people like ourselves get involved in this, movement or change in the funeral industry. At the end of the day, we're just bringing people back to their roots and the way things were always done. And cemeteries themselves are places of great respect and dignity, and they're the forefathers of. So to be in a place like that and have these deep conversations really makes a lot of sense, and it's a
Yeah.
beautiful place to reflect. So I appreciate you expressing that to the viewers because they're not a place to be afraid of. They're a place to be rejuvenated.
No, no, and I know in the UK, when you go to like the cemeteries, obviously they're quite old, and it's really interesting to go and look at all the headstones and just to read the names and the dates and see the families that are together. Yeah, it makes you really think about life, like you said, and about people's stories and the journey they might have been on, especially if you see someone that's died old, died really young. It just, yeah, you think about their stories. I saw another really interesting thing on social media recently about a lady that was going around collecting headstone recipes, and some headstones have like actual recipes that their families used to cook on them. So that I found that really interesting as well. Yeah. But the funerals that I attended as a child were all in the crematorium, and I always had that vision that when the curtains closed, the coffin went straight into the flames. And I think I didn't really understand any of it. So actually, as I've come on this journey, I've come to terms with a lot of things and learned a lot along the way. So yeah, it's a very special journey to be on, working with people in this way.
Absolutely. And I mean, with that being said, doing the work that you do, how do you approach creating a funeral or a memorial ceremony that feels deeply personal and reflective of the person who has died, especially in the contrast, to a traditional service?
So obviously it's a real privilege every time to be asked to do a funeral sometimes. And I think the most important thing is time. You need time with the family to sit with them, to find out about their person. It needs to be done in quite a relaxed environment. So as usually when I'm doing a funeral, I'll go to a family's house. Sometimes it can be with just one person. Sometimes it can be with the whole family there. Sometimes the extended family there. It's different every time. Usually ahead of our meeting, I send them a pack that I've created so that they know some of the things I will be asking them about, so that it's not a surprise. And then we just sit, and it's a bit like this. It's usually quite an informal conversation, but I guide it through questions about what they would like to happen to their person. And I'm usually going to be writing a eulogy, or they might be doing it. So I ask them lots of questions, and it's really nice usually because it brings up moments of laughter. It brings up the story of their life and the person that they really were and what they meant to their family. So I think that's can be kind of the start of the healing process for many people. Yeah, and I give them ideas that they could use, but I don't lead that too much. So if they've got, if their person had a special hobby or something like that, we try and find ways to incorporate that into the funeral. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. No. I mean, it has to be obviously a personal journey. And, you're really celebrating a life that was lived. So those family members sharing, all of the things that would have made that person happy in their life, is, I'm sure, critically important to you. And I mean, that would bring me to my next question. I mean, obviously you work with different types of ceremonies, from weddings to funerals. Uh, what are some common threads? Is it the meaningful moments, regardless of the occasion, when you work with the families in both realms?
Yeah, it's about the connection, isn't it? It's about the connection to the people that are there, and obviously in a funeral, it's about the connection to the person that's passed. So for me, obviously, I call myself a pagan celebrant because I'm quite earthy. So I usually like to involve the elements in some way in my ceremonies. I often do what we call calling in the quarters. So we will talk about the earth, the fire, the air, and the water, and we might talk about that a little bit in relation to, their lives or the stage of lives that they were in. I also always try to take a moment at the start of my ceremonies to ground people and take a moment to become aware of where we are, and just to have a moment to connect in with each other before we start, so that's quite just so that we're really present and that we're really in the space. What else do? I just try and provide different ideas of things that they can do. So some of the things in funerals particularly I might like to do, I mean, we go with the flow a little bit sometimes. So sometimes we might have a communal sharing where actually we just open the space for memories to be held. There will normally be a few people that will be speaking anyway, but I find having an open space in the middle means that people that perhaps didn't think they were going to speak might come up and just say a few words. And sometimes it can be really powerful. And I think it can also be really powerful, the people whose person it is, the people whose family members died, because they might hear stories that they didn't even know. It really can open up the conversation. I also, if possible, like to have a little bit of singing. I think, going back to the old ways, that is a way that we really connect to each other, isn't it? And singing or chanting together can be really powerful and can really bring people together. And music, every funeral we normally have some sort of music. I mean, my favourite piece that I ever played at a funeral was the song Time. It's the Pink Floyd song, but it was the Easy Star All Stars version, which is like a dub reggae version. And the man that had passed was a really big reggae fan. And I don't know if you know that song, but it starts with the ticking of the clock, and the words just really, really, really profound. Sometimes we might have like flowers, so just an opportunity for people to bring something with them that they want to place onto the grave or onto the person. Sometimes they'll just bring something from their garden, some green things, some sage or some rosemary. Sometimes it'll actually come from the family's garden, or sometimes everybody brings their own things, and it might be really colourful flowers, and we all, send them off with the person, put them into the grave. And I think that's a really special thing. I think in the UK, if you're in the crematorium at the moment, you only normally have 25 minutes for a ceremony where I am. So having that time for a green burial or something like that feels really important to me. That's one of the things I talk to people about and try and change in the UK. Time. You need that time to have your ceremony.
Absolutely. And, I can attest to the fact that, when people come to our facilities, there is no time limits. People need the amount of time that they need. And what I can appreciate about what you've said is that, kind of ironically, we all come from the earth. People tend to forget about that. And whatever your belief system may be, the earth, the ocean fire, all the things that, with the pagan belief, you can believe in that. You can grasp onto that because it's tangible, it's real, So we've had a few ceremonies from families that, were pagan beliefs that were 4 or 5 hours long. And I'll tell you, it was probably one of the, I don't know, most fantastic parties you might have ever been to. So I can kind of relate to what you're saying. And, in your experience in the UK, have you seen more families express interest in eco-friendly or environmentally conscious funerals opposed to, cremation, which has really kind of taken over?
Say the last one.
So have you seen an increase with environmentally conscious funerals opposed to cremation?
So I think it is really, really changing in the UK at the moment. I think the biggest thing is that more and more people are out there trying to educate people. Because in England, I don't know what it's like in America, it might not be quite so much, but we're not very good at talking about death. And for a lot of families, they don't really think about it. It's not something that's talked about or thought about till it happens. And then everything needs to be done in a real rush. So there's lots of people, I think, like yourselves and people in the UK that are out educating people and getting people to talk about it before we get to that point. So I run a death cafe, for example, where anyone can come and talk about death. There's lots of stuff in social media. So I think public awareness is growing, and I think as a country there are lots of people that are becoming more eco-conscious anyway. So when people get to that point, they're starting to think, actually, what do I want to do here? And there's some lovely suppliers that are doing really good work in the UK. Like there's a guy that I know that makes coffins out of the pallets, like the shipping pallets, that are really eco-friendly. Because I think, if you buy a bog standard coffin, it's made out of veneered wood, isn't it? That's not sustainable. It's got plastic handles, all of those things that aren't very good going back into the earth. So there's more eco-friendly coffins. I think shrouds are starting to become known about as a different way of burying people as well. And I think more green burial sites are being created in the UK. Like my local town, there is a cemetery that's been there for a long time, but out the back now they've created like a green burial space where it will be just people being returned to the earth in a really simple form. Because I know the green burials here, the rules are much stricter about what can be put into the earth than a traditional burial. So I think it is growing, and I think more families are thinking about it for sure.
And I would agree with that. And I would think that a lot of times I always tell people to experience one is to understand it. So as people go and they actually are part of one of these ceremonies, that's when the light bulb goes off in their head and they say, wait a minute, this is what I want. Because very, very similarly in America, people don't like to talk about death, but it's
Mm.
something that we can't avoid. And I think when you experience a natural burial, it brings you closer to death in a way that it's far less scary because you're
Yeah.
just going back to nature as you've come. So I love that. And I'm glad to hear that, that it continues to grow in the UK because, UK has been doing it, as a movement longer than we have been here in America. And
Okay, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I see lots of things from America as well. So it's lovely that we're growing together.
no, absolutely. And, because what you do is, I'm sure, very emotionally satisfying, but it can be taxing at times.
Yeah.
How do you balance guiding a family through like a sensitive emotional terrain with helping them feel empowered to shape a ceremony that truly honors their loved ones? So like, do you have any words of wisdom for them, as they start to talk about what they're thinking, what they would like to have?
Well, I think again, it's about time, isn't it? And I think just giving yourself the time to talk about it as a family. And I mean, I always try and provide families with information. There is lots of information out there if you need it, but also don't be scared to ask. So I'm always at the end of the phone when I'm working with families. They can ask me any question. No question is too silly because it is often new to people and you want them to get the best that they can have. So time, not being afraid to talk to each other. Sometimes families can all have very different thoughts, can't they, about what they think they want to happen. I think the other movement in the UK and the other thing I really encourage and why I run death cafes and things is to try and get people to talk about it before. So getting their wishes written down before they die. So their family, because I think it can be quite overwhelming when they get to that point and they haven't ever spoken about it. If there's nothing there, it's like you've just got to start from nothing. Whereas if you've talked about it a little bit, like I talk about it with my mum and I talk about it with my children, what do you want to happen or what do I want to happen to me? Then there's a starting point there. But yeah, just being there for people. I've got a few books and things that there's some really lovely books that they can read as well that can help them. So you're not being scared to ask questions.
No, that's very sound advice. And this last question is a bit of a dual fold question. I'm sure you've got many, so this is a difficult one. Uh, you know, there has to be a particular funeral service that probably was especially impactful to you. If you'd be willing to share some of that, and with that being said, where would you hope to see, your work, your individual work, let's say in the next 5 to 10 years?
So last year was quite a big year for me because I had two friends that died, two friends that I'm a musician, so two friends that I was in the music world with, and for both of those families, I was asked to do the funeral, so it was a real honour. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about both of them, if that's okay. So the first one was at a crematorium, and we wheeled him in. His name was Adam, and we wheeled him in on a hand cart. It was at the crematorium, but he had all these musicians friends with him, and everyone played him down. We had a couple of folk tunes, and we played him into the crematorium. During the service, a lot of his cousins were musicians, so we had people coming up and singing songs. We had a double bass on wheels that was carted around. Everybody stood up and we just sang a couple of songs together, and that was a real powerful moment. Again, we had that opening ceremony, that opening in the middle where people would come and share some memories, and that was a moment that brought a tear to nearly everybody's eyes. So that was really special. And the other one was a green burial, and that was my friend Ali. Again, a musician, a very gregarious lady. There were probably about 120 people. And that was at a natural burial ground in Suffolk, close to where I live. I think as everybody, with the time, as everybody's arriving, there were hundreds of people. So that time talking to each other, it's always a little bit fizzy at the start, isn't it? Everybody's coming together, sharing memories. And then as soon as it was time to walk down, you could feel the emotion. It was really powerful walking through the trees together. And then we all stood round to an open grave. And like you said, that makes it really close for people, doesn't it? It shows people, this is what happened. She's going back to the earth. And again, we put flowers on her grave. Everybody had a moment. So everybody came up and said a few words. They put a flower on her. Her daughter and her sister said some really, really poignant words. Her daughter actually sang a song on her guitar just for her mum. So that was just her and her guitar, and she'd written a song especially for her mum. So that was, again, a really emotional moment. And it's beautiful, and to be in the woods together. And then we actually did another beautiful thing, because it's what you do after the funeral as well. We all went off to the pub and we played some music together. We sat in the garden, we had some food, we told stories of her life, and that was, it was very special time to meet people that she knew that maybe I didn't know, to meet people that we'd been on a journey with together, and just to share time together, and to and that was Ali. She was a singer. She was out there. She was gregarious. She loved bringing people together. So, two really special people that died, but a real honour to be able to do their funerals for them.
Well, that's beautiful. And what you've made is a memorable experience, out of that celebration. A lot of people don't want to remember because, of course, they're grief-stricken, but you can't allow the death of someone to be the defining moment of a life that was lived. So I think that was a wonderful way for you guys to celebrate your friends. It sounds like it was lovely. And, we really appreciate here at the Global Green Burial Alliance all the work that you do. The people in the UK are very fortunate to have someone like yourself. So I hope that you can help more families. And we really thank you for joining us today, Emily. I mean, can you share? Do you have a website or anything that the viewers can visit?
Yeah, my website's just www.emilymycelebrant.co.uk. I'm quite easy to find on social media and things like that. So, and I'll be posting about today's interview. And obviously, thank you for asking me. It's been a real lovely thing to be able to meet you and to be able to find out a little bit more about the work you do.
Well, we really appreciate it. Thank you very much, Emily. And this is Ed Bixby with the Global Green Burial Alliance. And this was Spotlight Now.